The ropework, Des Pawson MBE.
MBE, don't promote me too far.
No, so OBE is, yeah. But what I will say, Des, is we first met at the East Coast Boat Show with Martin Holliman.
Yeah, indeed we did.
And I think I knew about 5 or 6 knots as my dad taught me, and what I did from fishing. It inspired me. Unfortunately, I can't do what you do, and what you do is amazing. But I was trying to inspire people. We haven't got the what do you call it up? Just put that on pause for a second. Idea, which I've done on my YouTube and my TikTok account, which is I've used 2 different coloured ropes, because sometimes using 2 different coloured ropes is a really good way of learning how to tie the knots, isn't it?
And it gives you the structure.
Yes.
You can see the structure. You don't get lost with your unders and overs in quite the same sort of way.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, right, sir.
There's nothing worse than getting your unders and overs muzzled up. Okay, so the first one, which is is the simplest one, hopefully.
Yeah.
Instead of
an overhang, you've got a figure of 8.
Yeah.
We agree with that, I think.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Yes.
So, thank goodness for that. We all agree on that.
Yeah. And left or right hang, of course, is we could talk about that. Couldn't we? We could be here all day.
Yeah.
Hold mine. Mine is the mirror image of yours.
Yeah.
Where does Sue's come up? Sue's is the same as yours.
Yeah.
I think that's something that all knot tying people should understand. All people learning knots is that there are mirror images and they're exactly the same. No, you do yours naturally.
Yeah.
But the mirror image is exactly the same knot, and therefore it can be confusing until you understand that the mirror image exists.
And that's something that gets messed up, especially on bowlines, because sometimes they look wrong, but we'll come on to that in a minute.
Okay.
One of the things I say is that is used as a stopper knot, and a lot of yachts people use it to stop the boat going through the block. One of the things my dad went on from there was to do it as a double, because what he liked was on the kestrel, by doing it like that, the kestrel's fair leads are quite forward. You've ended up with a little loop at the end of the figure of 8, which he could then, if the boat went out of the cockpit, he could grab it with a bowline and pull it back.
Oh, very nice.
Did you know that one?
No, that's
yes, something I knew. But that's a really, I found that was a really useful.
He used it just on the end as a stopper, but with the extra loop to be able to capture it with a boat.
Yeah. So he could actually stick his boat hook down the side and pull it back, because the kestrel decks are narrow. Yeah. He was 75. He didn't want to go out the cockpit, and he had this little idea of he could pull it back.
Okay. Good on your dad.
And this is one thing I think we should all remember, that knots progress. That you have the basic knots, and then you find a reason for them. It's like Charlie Brinkley on the East Coast taught me about tying a bowline on a bite to make a strop, you know. Anyway, from that one, I put the reef knot because...
so you don't stop there with that figure of 8 knot. You don't go on to talk about it as being a loop knot as well.
No.
Because effectively what you were talking about, what your dad did, but the climbers would make a bigger loop, and the climbing fraternity believe more in a figure of 8 as a loop knot than a bowline.
Right, okay.
And there's a reason for that, is because if you make a mistake with your bowline, it can be dangerous.
Yes.
If you make a mistake with your figure of 8, you finish up with an overhang knot, and that is nowhere near as disastrous as a mistied bowline.
And this proves straight away how much there is to know about knots.
Indeed.
Yeah? And all we're trying to do is get people to tie some knots, but what you're saying is absolutely brilliant, because it brings on the fact that MAIB have warned about the fact that if the wrong knot is used, it can be dangerous, and they talk about the fact that the strength's lost in a knot. So would the use of a figure of 8 as a loop compared to a bowline be stronger than a bowline, or are they about the same level?
I would suggest that they are near enough the same.
Yeah.
But the point that I was making was that if you made a mistake tying a figure of 8 and you finished up with an overhang knot, you are better off than if you made a bowline wrong and it slides and comes apart.
Right.
It's not good, your overhand loop, but it's not as bad as a truly mistied boat. And will you come to the bowline in your...
I will, yes.
Well,
because the bowline, the bowline saved my life.
Well,
So I'll show you about this. So the simple one, I always think is the simple one that everyone learns in school almost, isn't it? And then in guides and clubs and everything is basically the left over right and the right over left, isn't it? Which gets you there. But a lot of people probably make a loop on one side and then come through and round the back and back down and through, wouldn't you? Which gives you the same version, doesn't it?
Well, it depends.
And you're going to tell me another one.
We know where we're going with that one.
Yeah, because I can see straight away you're going this way because we all tie the knots differently, so you'd end up with the two ends on the top, wouldn't you?
Well, on top, as opposed to you had the one on one side and one on the other.
One on the other, yeah.
No, you need it to. But equally, that knot can have its mirror image anyway.
Yeah.
And I dare say that it's possible and you do that without thinking.
Yeah.
So let's have a look and see.
So that's
Sue's the same as mine. We're all
about
we're all the same.
But if you tie it as a start as a loop.
No, you don't even need to start as a loop. Now, my reef knot is different to yours.
Right.
It's the same. It's the S and Z of lay of rope.
And see, if I do that as a loop and then come through,
loop, but you could have done it. No, that's not the same. My short ends are on the same side.
That's what I'm saying. Mine aren't.
No.
Yeah.
If you put your loops on the same side, you can finish up with that.
Yeah.
We could have a whole evening of this.
Well, I know, we've only got 20 minutes, but the point is, this is fascinating because this is the sort of things I love to find out about what we're doing.
Yeah.
But from that knot, I then went to this one because I felt that's a progression that the thing I always say to people is if you do left over right and then you do your right over left to do your reef knot, you've only then got to lift one out to put the other one over to actually create the sheep bend. And as if you're trying to teach kids that if they get to the reef knot, they can then do that way.
But we also need to make sure that we have the short ends
together, not opposing. Does it?
I think it should be on the same side. The short end should be on the same side.
That's what I'm saying. So that would be that way, you see?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's the attention, and people have problems remembering knots, don't they, Ben?
Yeah.
And getting mixed up. And the thing to do is to look at the structure.
Yeah.
You agree, sir? I mean, the structure of the knot is all important, and if it's not quite how you wanted it to be, as you showed with your reef knot earlier, you can play around with it to get it how you want it to be.
Yeah, and the difference of the tails being on the same side, is it, from a strength point of view, does it alter the knot or does it allow it to slide easier?
No, it's supposed to be stronger.
Stronger.
It's supposed to be on the same side.
Yeah. It's to stop the knots from sliding, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I believe so.
Yes, and I think that's the interesting thing about knotting is that knots, you need to understand, you need to tie them in the right way, and some of them will be quite critical of how they're tied, some of them will be less so.
Because as you tie them incorrectly, you can actually weaken the rope.
Well,
on the load.
this is the biggest nightmare today. It's people understanding that the spectras and dynemas of this world are so strong rope.
Yeah.
But therefore, if we tie a knot in it, well, actually tying the knot in a piece of spectra or dynema reduces the spectra. I think spectra particularly, the reduction of strength. Yes, or spectra or dynema, both of them. The strength reduction is dramatic.
Yeah, it's over 50%, isn't it?
Exactly. So you shouldn't be tying knots in it anyway.
Yeah.
Really, but I think
that's why most people do these loop splices and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But the actual knot is quite dangerous, isn't it?
So the sheep bend there that you show your two ends, and that's always an important thing in many illustrations. Books don't show the fact that these are the short ends, because in your picture they're all the same length.
Yeah.
But there is the definition of the whipping on the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's I always teach people the double. The main reason for that is when I used to go long lining, we used to have the bins in 25 hook bins. So I used to put them up with whelks, and to bring them ashore, they need to come apart. And the trouble with the sheep bend is the fact if you do it as a single, then you've got your fishing boat on the end of it in a tide, it gets to the point that you can't undo it. So my guy called Billy Newsom, who was the last pilot on the River Devon, who I used to bait up for and go out with, used to say to me, put a double in. And again, that's the main reason is the fact you can always break the back of the knot.
Yeah, and it's that tiny bit more secure, an extra touch in lots of these things. So what's your next one, sir? The clove hitch.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
So I can do this, I can hold this one for you, and if you want to just sort of do it to the camera, the clove hitch can be done either as a Samson post or as like a hitching rail, done it to. You come over and through, and again, it's...
And depending which way around you want to do it, bearing in mind your mirror images always, so different books, different images, but this way, that's it, and it should be learnt to be tied round something. It shouldn't be learnt to do the quick way, the two half hitches and drop off.
Drop it onto bottom.
That's all very fine, but that's not always appropriate. Whereas if you can tie it round something, always you're in good place.
And then from that knot, I then did the rolling hitch, and it's a knot I use quite regularly, especially abroad when I'm stern mooring, because some of the places I moor up, like in Nidri or Baveza, there aren't enough cleats on the shore. So what I tend to do is I do the rolling hitch, and what I do is I tie a rope between the two bollards on the quayside. My yacht is moored, say, here, and then I'll tie a rolling hitch here to pick up the line to keep the yacht tied in tight against the keyway by using that as a bridle, and it stops the rope sliding this way.
Ooh. Not so sure. I'm a little bit kind of, I think we're not very clear here with what we're doing. This may not quite be the forum to discuss the subtleties of the rolling hitch as opposed to the Magnus hitch, which are very close and similar.
I do like the rolling hitch. So I use the rolling hitch.
So for me, what I like is the fact my wife and all my family can tie it really quickly because they know how to tie clove hitch, and they don't do that. And this goes back to the yacht here, and I take that really tight.
So this is the stress,
and that's going that way. So
that's fine. No, that's fine. It's getting that tuck in there.
Correct. It stops the rope sliding down.
It's important, and at that point in time, if you made a loop version of that, it would be a midshipman's hitch. Can we bring it up here? Bring it up here.
I like learning an extra knot or two.
But no.
I use
never stop learning.
I use the rolling hitch on a boat if you want to tension halyards a bit more.
That's another great one to use.
So I'll put a rolling hitch on from the handy billy, and you can apply more tension from halyards.
Tie it. I'm going to tie it that way.
Right.
Can you see the subtle difference?
Yeah, there's a very subtle difference.
The strain on this one is that way. So that second pass blocking on there.
So that's a bit like when you're doing like the anchor hitch where I got later, where you put the rope over to trap itself.
That is what I would call the rolling hitch, rather than the two turns.
So what you've got here is slightly a subtle difference on yours, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and again, I think we've actually got this as a mirror image of things.
Not far off.
Because no, actually, you're all right. That's the picture.
That's the picture.
And that's the strain. I would have had.
I think it's fascinating. It's great to see you after all these years.
Well, very well, Ben.
But that's good. I love this. All this sort of stuff is so important to know. And then basically off the back of that one, I did a round turn and two half hitches.
Done job. I don't think we. No. The important thing of this is that first bit, the round turn.
It's a full round turn. The number of times people don't take a full round turn, they actually just take it round. You've got to go around the garden.
Somebody once gave me the mechanical formula to how much strain is taken by making a round turn. It's remarkable. So that means that the stress then on the main rope is minimal. Well, not minimal, but is much reduced. It's the round turn that's almost as important as the two half hitches.
Because you're creating an area of friction,
Exactly.
which actually is creating the anchorage of it, isn't it? That's fascinating. This is the one that is almost like we were talking about of your bits and pieces of the anchor hitch, where basically you've got the loop.
It's misdrawn.
Is it really? Yeah. So,
This bend, this.
oh yeah, it should have come round. Yeah, it's been missing the line at the bottom. So yeah.
Oh,
I'll get a little tip pen. I hadn't noticed that. Good
Oh,
spot.
there you are.
Yeah, but that's off the image we borrowed. So basically, we're talking about the fact that it comes round, and then you actually take a turn, a full turn, but then you bring the rope through itself, back on itself, isn't it? That side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
you
you do the two hitches.
Indeed.
Yeah, and it should be two hitches, not one. So what's interesting here is this should have a second hitch on it, is it?
This is supposedly a second hitch, but
Yeah.
it's been misdrawn.
Incorrectly drawn.
They're drawn across the...
I will change that slide for tomorrow. That's perfect. That's beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So that's that one. Isn't it weird? This stuff's made of recycled plastic bottles.
Well, there you go. There you are. Once upon a time, it was made from plants, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
The Zeppelin.
And Zeppelin, which, as I say, is the last but one, which is
Okay.
basically the two loops, which are almost like learning a clove hitch, with two different bits of rope, isn't it? Of basically having them on opposing sides. But the bit that I always find interesting is the fact that quite often the knot, as it's drawn, can be a bit confusing as to you go over the top of this one, but does this one come over the top of that one there, or does it come underneath? Which some people tell me it should come underneath, and other people say no, you tied it right. But
I don't think that's right. What you've got there doesn't look right to me. And I'm very... So it's not a knot that I would commonly use, but...
I've done it wrong in front of you, which I
Well, there we are. This is it, and I'm not sure. The line, I get very mixed up, partly because of the image of them being, and the method of tying.
Yeah.
The method of tying.
When I don't look at the image, I can do it. That's the stupid bit. Yeah, so you've gone to the bowline. So I think that is correct now. I've got it round the right way. It's just the fact I was too busy looking at the image and not actually at what I was doing.
We have much the same. Yes, we are concurred. And I would suggest to you that another name for this is Hunter's Bend.
Yeah.
And it was the Hunter's Bend published on the front page of the Times back in about 1979 or so, that sets about the formation of the International Guild of Knot Tyers, which were formed in 1982.
Yeah.
I was the co-founder. I've now basically bailed out. Sue here is now a trustee, one of the trustees at International, and the fact that the Hunter's Bend was on the front page of the Times, and it turned out, and it could be the Ringer's Bend as well.
Yeah.
Phil Smith from California came up with it. There's the subtle variations within these that we could spend another afternoon or another couple of pints as to what goes on inside that crossover point and how they are tied and so on.
Yeah. But it's fascinating seeing how different people with different hands do different knots in slightly different ways.
What's the last one then, Ben?
The last one is the bowline, which is the one that saved my life.
Well,
Because I tied it behind I had to tie it one-handed while holding onto the boom of the boat while my boat was pounding into 10-foot sea, and the lifeboatmen were waiting to grab me as I swung off the main halyard.
Oh, well, there you go.
So for me, I've always learned to do it that way, of turning it and spinning it round, because that way you never get the loop wrong.
No.
Yeah,
But you have to have a decent tail.
Yes, absolutely.
There is a whole gang of people that speak about the bowline mafia because everybody says that the bowline's the king of knots, or is it a bend? To quote that poem.
But the biggest problem with it, the bowline, is people remembering to tie it that way, because if they don't tie it that way and they make the loop that way, it never becomes a bowline.
Well,
it's coming back to what we started.
A mirror image,
and
I noticed that you tie your bowline with the end on the inside.
Inside, yeah.
And that, some many years ago, there was a bit of actual practical test work done to say whether it was inside or outside. Now I have to think twice about making it on the
I've got
outside.
inside one, so if you tie that side,
I've got to think very hard to do the difference between the
Yeah,
inside.
so you go the wrong way round the trees,
Well,
is what I call it.
Well then, so mine is on the outside,
Yeah,
yours is on the inside,
yeah. So
yours
that's
is on the in.
that's the way I've always tried it. But I get the
Interesting.
fact that if you take it round the tree the wrong way, you then end up with a bowline.
But it's a bowline. But
It's still a bowline.
The structure of the bowline is in fact the basis of your sheet bend.
Yeah.
And your sheet bend is perhaps the earliest knot ever found. It's found everywhere in fishing nets today, and 4,000 years ago, something like that.
Wow.
More than that, on a piece of netting found in a bog between Finland and Russia, fishing net tied with the sheet bend forming the net.
Yeah.
And in Europe, you will often find the tail on the outside.
Yeah.
There are places in this country that historically you would have found that as well. One of them being Hull,
Right.
and the other
Vikings.
is Gravesend.
Right.
And one of the reasons, and I think we can probably demonstrate it quite nicely here, if we pretended that that was a mooring buoy, you make a big loop on yours, but keeping the tail on the inside.
I can see straight away what you're going to show.
Yeah. Will I bigger loop?
Bigger than that?
Look, will it go on my bottom?
Will it go down the bottle? Go
There we
bottle.
go. Yes, that will.
So you see that with all of those, it's easier to untie
Yes.
when it's on the outside than on the
Do
inside.
you know what? I've tried this knot for 60, 55 years like this. I'm going to have to change my
Well,
head.
and in the Netherlands, and I don't know which way round it is, one way is the way shown in the Merchant Navy school, and one is in the Royal
Yeah.
Navy school, and you can almost tell which, as it were,
Where they from?
exactly.
Yeah, lovely.
And so, but they're not wrong. The structure is the same. And if I dare mention a competitor to English Braids, Marlow ropes, that are owned by the same firm anyway, they did a test and were published in Yachting Monthly, I think it was, that effectively there is no difference in the strength.
Yeah, I think that's actually most important. But I get the fact of the handiness of being able to have.
But
Because
that was
on the quayside in Peveza, the guy who came along with a mallet, because they tied the super yacht up with that knot,
Yeah.
they couldn't undo it, they couldn't get out of the mix, so he turned up with a mallet and was hitting the back of the knot to break the knot to get it out.
But it's actually the fact that the tail is on the outside to be able to get to it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the bowline is the king of knots.
Yeah.
And today is knot tying, World Knot
Yeah.
Tying Day, and we're here celebrating the man who started, in many ways, who wrote the Bible, the Ashley Book of Knots, the Guild of Knot Tyers.
Well, I hope we've paid homage,
Well, we have.
and at the end of the day, I can't thank you enough for coming, and Sue, and Sue's demonstrating at the boat show here how to make rope.
Yep.
And stuff like that, so fantastic, and I really appreciate your time.
Okay.
And time and tide waits for no man, but
Okay.
thank you so much.
All right.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.